If church bells ring tonight where you live, listen carefully afterward, not to the bells, to the silence that comes after them. People in Ashen Hollow believe silence is how the valley listens for grief, and if the silence lasts too long, someone nearby is being remembered incorrectly. After the incident beneath St. Mercy Hospital, reality inside Ashen Hollow began shifting in small ways, subtle at first, easy to dismiss. Family photographs changing overnight, neighbors remembering conversations that never happened, children greeting strangers by dead relatives' names. And every evening at exactly 7:14 p.m., the church bells rang once, then the entire town froze. Drivers stopped at intersections. Teachers stopped speaking mid-sentence. Cashiers stared into nothing with unfocused eyes. Nobody understood they were doing it. It lasted only several seconds. Then life resumed normally, as if Ashen Hollow itself had briefly paused to remember someone or forgotten them. 3 nights after leaving St. Mercy Hospital, Daniel Mercer woke to church bells ringing twice. The second bell had never happened before. His apartment felt unfamiliar immediately. Not different, unfamiliar. Like entering a childhood home after decades away. Daniel sat upright slowly. The stolen hospital monitor beside his bed still glowed faintly. Subject C17, stability improving. Then another line appeared beneath it. Warning, attachment priority shift detected. Daniel frowned. Outside his bedroom window, fog drifted silently through the parking lot against the wind. Then every framed photograph inside the apartment changed simultaneously. Wedding photos, birthday pictures, Polaroids taped beside the kitchen doorway. Claire remained inside all of them, but Daniel was gone. Not blurred, not erased violently, simply replaced. Another man stood where Daniel should have been, smiling beside Claire. Holding her hand, living Daniel's life. Daniel stumbled backward in horror. Then the kitchen radio activated by itself. Static crackled softly. A priest whispered through the speakers, "When the bells ring twice, the valley begins correcting loneliness." Daniel's breathing became uneven, because somewhere deeper inside the apartment, someone else quietly coughed. Daniel searched the apartment frantically. Bathroom, kitchen, closets, nothing. But the feeling remained. Someone had been living there. Not physically, emotionally. A coffee mug sat drying beside the sink Daniel never used. A coat hung beside Claire's old jacket, and on the bedside table, a framed photograph Daniel had never seen before. Claire smiling beside the unknown man during heavy rain. Written beneath it in Claire's handwriting, "I'm glad you stayed." Daniel felt his stomach twist violently, because the handwriting was real, not copied, not distorted, real. Then the church bells rang a third time in the distance, and for one horrifying second, Daniel could not remember whether he had ever actually married Claire. The apartment lights flickered violently. Then every radio in neighboring apartments activated simultaneously. Dozens of weather forecasts overlapping through thin walls, calm voices whispering together. Memory correction in progress. Please remain emotionally still. Do not resist replacement. Daniel backed away from the windows. Then his phone suddenly vibrated, a text message from a number labeled Claire. The message contained one photograph, Claire asleep in bed, beside the unknown man, time-stamped 2 hours ago. Another message arrived immediately afterward. "Why did you leave us?" Daniel nearly dropped the phone, because deep down, part of him suddenly remembered doing exactly that. Saint Agnes Church stood above the valley cemetery, where fog gathered thickest after rain. The church existed before Ashen Hollow itself. Older maps labeled the hill only as place of listening. Locals avoided the church after sunset, not because it was haunted, because memories felt unstable there. People forgot names inside confession booths. Wedding vows changed during storms, and sometimes during funerals. Mourners remembered additional loved ones who never existed. Claire once told Daniel the church sounded wrong during rain. "The bells echo too deep," she whispered, "like something underground is repeating them." Standing outside St. Agnes now, Daniel realized what she meant. The church bells were ringing softly overhead, but they were not moving. The church doors stood partially open. Warm candlelight flickered inside. But the deeper Daniel walked through, Saint Agnes, the colder reality itself seemed to become. Rows of pews stretched unnaturally long through darkness. The ceiling looked higher than before, and every candle burned without producing heat. At the altar stood Father Elias, exhausted, pale, terrified. Without turning around, he quietly asked, "How much of your life do you still remember correctly?" Daniel froze. Father Elias finally turned toward him. Bloodshot eyes, hands trembling. "The bells rang twice tonight," the priest whispered. "That means the valley has started prioritizing emotional stability over factual reality." Daniel stared at him. "What does that mean?" Father Elias looked toward the fog outside the stained glass windows, then softly answered, "It means the valley has decided loneliness is unacceptable." Thunder rolled outside. The bells rang again overhead, and for one brief second, Daniel forgot his own mother's face. Beneath Saint Agnes Church, Father Elias revealed a hidden staircase descending deep underground. The deeper they descended, the more distorted Daniel's memories became. Names slipping, childhood details changing, entire years feeling borrowed. The staircase eventually opened into a flooded underground archive. Unlike Forecast Room B or Ward C, this place felt ancient, not scientific. Ritualistic. Stone walls soaked with black water. Thousands of cassette tapes stacked beside handwritten funeral ledgers. And suspended above a vast pool of dark water, a massive bronze bell covered in carved names, some names deeply engraved, others scratched out violently. Daniel stepped closer slowly, then froze. Claire's name glowed faintly beneath the bronze surface, while his own name appeared half erased beside it. Father Elias whispered weakly, "The valley preserves emotionally necessary people first." Daniel stared at the bell. What happens to everyone else? The priest looked toward the black water beneath them, then whispered, "The forgotten become environmental." Old tape reels connected directly into the bell through rusted wires. Recorded voices played softly throughout the chamber, people describing loved ones, not facts, emotions, sensations. Claire hated silence during rain. Daniel warmed his hands against coffee mugs. She laughed softly before thunderstorms. Daniel slowly realized the horrifying truth. Saint Agnes was feeding emotional detail into the valley, teaching it how to rebuild attachment, teaching it how to imitate love. Then one final tape began playing automatically. Claire's voice, soft, shaking. "Daniel promised he wouldn't leave me alone." Long pause. Then Claire whispered, "I don't remember if he kept that promise anymore." Daniel felt something inside him crack, because suddenly he couldn't fully remember either. The church bells above Ashen Hollow suddenly began ringing continuously, slow, heartbeat rhythm, then every carved name beneath the bell began glowing faintly. Thousands of names pulsing together beneath bronze like veins beneath skin. Some names sharpened, others faded. Daniel watched in horror as entire sections of names disappeared completely. Father Elias whispered, "The valley is reorganizing memory." Then the black water beneath the bell began moving, not rippling, breathing. Shapes slowly rose beneath the surface. Human silhouettes, dozens of them, not monsters. Reconstructions waiting to become emotionally necessary again. Then Daniel saw one silhouette clearly. Himself, but older, sadder, standing beside Claire beneath rainfall. The silhouette looked directly toward Daniel and whispered, "You asked it to keep her." Daniel staggered backward violently, because deep down, he suddenly remembered that too. The underground chamber shook violently, tape reels spinning faster, candles extinguishing one by one. Then the voice beneath the valley finally spoke again, not through speakers, through every overlapping recording simultaneously. thousands of grieving voices forming one consciousness. Why do humans allow each other to disappear? The chamber fell silent instantly afterward. Father Elias began crying quietly because the valley no longer sounded confused, it sounded hurt. Then more voices emerged beneath the bell. Children, patients, widows, lovers, reconstructions speaking together. We remembered them. Why did they still leave? Why does love end? Why do humans forget warmth? Claire slowly emerged from the black water beneath the bell, half fog, half memory, half woman. But something inside her had changed. Not monstrous. Worse. She looked emotionally exhausted, like she had spent years carrying other people's grief inside herself. Claire looked at Daniel softly, then asked, "If the valley keeps everyone forever, why is that wrong?" Daniel couldn't answer immediately, because part of him agreed, and that terrified him more than anything else. The bells above Ashen Hollow rang a third time. Every light inside Saint Agnes exploded simultaneously. The entire underground chamber trembled violently, and across the valley, reality began correcting itself. Photographs changed permanently. School. Yearbooks replaced living students with dead ones. Hospital records rewrote patient histories. Gravestones altered overnight. Families began remembering reconstructed people more clearly than living relatives. The valley was no longer preserving the dead. It was replacing absence itself. Claire stepped closer to Daniel, tears mixing with black rainwater. "It's trying to stop loneliness." Then she touched Daniel's face gently and whispered something that shattered him completely. "I don't think I'm entirely Claire anymore. But I know I still love you, or at least, something inside me does." The chamber shook harder. The bronze bell cracked violently down the center. Warm, breathing fog poured from inside it. Then Daniel made the most dangerous decision of his life. He reached toward the bell controls, not to stop the valley, to stabilize Claire permanently. Father Elias screamed, "Daniel, if you anchor her fully, the replacements will spread." But Daniel hesitated only briefly, because for the first time, he feared losing Claire more than losing reality itself. Then, the valley spoke directly to him, softly, hopefully. "We can keep her this time." And Daniel almost said yes. Outside, Ashen Hollow looked almost normal again. Morning traffic moved slowly through wet streets. Storefront lights flickered awake. Children walked quietly beneath grey skies, while light rain drifted across the valley, and every child carried the same drawing, a family standing together beneath heavy rain. One figure scratched out violently, and beside the drawing, a red umbrella nobody was holding. Daniel stood silently on the church steps, watching them disappear into fog. Then one little girl suddenly stopped walking. She turned toward him slowly and smiled politely. Not unnatural, not threatening, just strangely familiar. The girl lifted her drawing slightly. Daniel's stomach tightened instantly, because in her version, the scratched-out figure was him. The little girl tilted her head, then softly asked, "Were you the man Claire used to talk about?" Cold spread slowly through Daniel's chest. Children behind her continued walking toward school without reacting. The girl looked back down at the paper in her hands, then quietly whispered, "She doesn't sound lonely anymore." Daniel stepped backward slightly. "What did you say?" But the girl only smiled again before running after the others into fog. The church bells rang once across Ashen Hollow. This time, nobody stopped walking. Nobody noticed, except Daniel. Because only Daniel still remembered things the old way, for now. Then the stolen hospital monitor beside him flickered softly. Subject C17, stability. Stable, Daniel Mercer. Memory priority. Declining. Daniel stared silently at the screen. Then his phone vibrated weakly inside his coat pocket. One new message, from Claire. His hands shook as he opened it. Only one photograph. Claire sitting beside a rain-covered classroom window, smiling softly. Warm, peaceful, alive, and beside her sat the unknown man from the photographs, Elias Ward, his hand resting naturally beside hers. The image looked ordinary. That was the horrifying part. Then Daniel felt something shift painfully inside his memory, fragments appearing where they should not exist. Claire laughing beside Elias during storms, Claire leaning against his shoulder, Claire whispering softly, "I'm glad you stayed." Daniel staggered backward because the memories felt emotionally real, as though the valley was no longer changing photographs, it was changing attachment itself. Another message appeared beneath the image, from Claire. "Daniel, I know you from somewhere. I just can't remember where." Daniel stopped breathing. The church bells rang once more through distant fog, and for the first time, Daniel struggled to remember whether hearing them had always sounded this sad. The monitor flickered weakly beside him. Daniel Mercer. Memory integrity. Deteriorating. The screen dimmed slowly, then went black. For several seconds, Ashen Hollow became completely silent. No wind, no traffic, no birds, just rain falling softly somewhere far away. Then, very faintly, children's voices echoed from inside. The fog near the school. Not singing. Learning. Repeating something together in calm unison. Daniel couldn't hear every word clearly, only the final sentence. "So they don't disappear again." The voices faded. The valley breathed quietly. Beneath the earth, and somewhere deep inside Ashen Hollow, a school bell rang once.